I want to just do a little bit of a review. How many of you are here for the first time? Okay. The outline you have is, this outline is what we did yesterday. Okay, so this is what we define as the life mechanism, and we said that if you choose goals that are appropriate for you, and if you choose to have a positive attitude, you will motivate yourself to act in a way in which you'll be very successful at creating a life experience that becomes satisfying. But if you choose a goal that's not appropriate for you, or if you choose to have a negative attitude, you will motivate yourself and you will act, but the machine now starts moving in a different direction. You'll be very successful in creating a life experience that becomes dissatisfying. So please note, you make the choices and create your own life experience. See, this is why we call this responsible spirituality, and it is essentially what Franciscan spirituality is all about. Now today, we want to spend time talking about meditation because people always ask, well, how do you know which choices to make? The secret is meditation. So, in the past, if you wanted to learn anything about meditation, you had to go to organized religion because that's where all the material is stored. The problem with that is that each religious denomination had a different way of talking about it, and they had different techniques for doing meditation. So one said, for example, you have to say it this way, and the other one says, no, you have to say it this way. If you go to the Far East, they will tell you if you want to meditate, you have to get into the lotus position. You know what that means? You have to cross your legs like this so that the soles of your feet are facing up. Well, if we had to do that, there would be very few people in this room who would be able to meditate. Now, the wonderful thing is that the scientific community has been studying meditation. And so they're giving us a universal language to talk about meditation. And they're also giving us the essentials of meditation, so that the scientific community is helping us to bring meditation to anybody, regardless of what their religious convictions might be. So the first person who started to do this study is a man by the name of Hans Berger. He knew that there is an electrical field that is coming off of the brain. Right now, all of you have that energy field. It's called an aura. And he wanted to measure that. So he took small metal discs about the size of a $50, and he took a cloth band and tied them very tightly to a person's head. And then he had wires going from those electrodes into a machine that would read how much electrical energy was going through that wire. Well, he found out that every time he did this experiment, he had his subjects lying down, and they always gave out readings somewhere between 4 and 12 cycles. And so he thought at first that that was the full range in which the human mind and the brain function. Now, quite by accident one time, one of these people got up from the cot on which they were lying to get a glass of water or open a window or something. And the person who was doing the monitoring realized that they were creating more electrical energy. So Hans Berger started a whole new set of experiments in which he was having these people do the kinds of things that you and I do in our normal waking state. And he found that in the normal waking state, the average person functions somewhere between 14 and 28 cycles per second. So he called this one alpha, the first letter of the Greek alphabet, because he found it first, and this one beta. Now, since that time, the scientific community has discovered two other areas of brain functioning. One that goes down to 4, which is called theta, and the other that goes down to 0, which is called delta. Now, for our purposes here, I just want to make a very clear distinction between these upper brain frequencies and these lower brain frequencies. It's very important that you understand every 24 hours, you have to spend a certain amount of time here in these upper brain frequencies and a certain amount of time here in these lower brain frequencies if you want to function normally. Well, it's very important to understand that normally that kind of balance takes place in sleep. So that at night, when you start getting drowsy, the reason why that's happening is that the brain frequencies are slowing down. And when you get here to 12 cycles and you let go of your awareness, then you fall asleep. Now please note that the pattern goes all the way down into delta, and then it goes up like this all night long until eventually you come out of sleep. So that's where the balance usually happens. Now, you know, since we had this financial downturn, you know how many businesses have cut personnel, but they still have the same amount of work. They want to be able to create more money, and they want the people who are working in their businesses to spend more time. So what happens is that some of these people, in order to keep their job, are taking time away from sleep. Now, you can't do that on a regular basis and still function in a normal way. When you deprive yourself of sleep on a regular basis, you're going to start creating stress up here in your normal waking state. Now, there are many people who are doing this. The medical community now identifies this state as sleep deprivation syndrome, and it's serious business. You know, I heard an interview of some of these people who have sleep deprivation syndrome, and there was a gentleman who was married only a year or two, and he and his wife had an infant child, and they were taking turns taking that baby to the nursery. And this day, it was his turn. So he put the baby in the back seat of the car and went to work. And when he got out of work and he got to the car, realized he had forgotten to drop the baby off. And the baby died. You know, my dear friends, here in the United States, every day we have serious automobile accidents, some fatal, only because the people who are driving those cars have sleep deprivation syndrome. They're not functioning properly. My dear friends, you are all human beings. Business wants you to function like a machine. It won't work. But please note, that's a choice. If a person goes into a company and they want you to work longer hours and deprive yourself of sleep, that's a choice. But what the person is doing is putting themselves into danger at the expense of their own life or their own lifestyle. And for what good? So that the person who owns a business makes more money. That doesn't make any sense to me. But those are the kind of choices that people are being led to make these days. Now, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the mind and the brain. Now, please note that these are two different entities. The brain is physical. You can touch it. It's a machine. Mind refers to that part of you that is non-material or spiritual. In theological terms, you could refer to mind as soul or spirit. So let me say a little bit about the brain. The brain is probably the most important organ in your body. And the reason I say that is, right now, whether you're thinking about it or not, your brain is telling your eyelids how to blink. It tells your heart how to beat. It tells your lungs how to breathe. It keeps your body temperature even, keeps your metabolism going. All that is happening because the brain is functioning normally. Now, the brain is made out of cells that are not like the rest of the cells in the body. And the scientists today are still doing enormous amounts of research, and they don't understand the entire process. But the point I want to make is this. You know, if you cut your finger, you destroy skin cells. There's intelligence in those cells. As soon as the damage is done, the blood will coagulate over that wound to seal it. And underneath, the skin cells immediately start to create new skin cells to repair the damage. And the damage is repaired so beautifully that when it's complete, it pushes the scab off. You don't even have a scar. The cells in your brain don't work that way. They're different. Now, the scientists have been able to recreate brain cells in a laboratory. But you know, when you destroy brain cells, the scientists are not sure whether they can be recreated, or if they do, how long that will take. So that means that you have to take care of the brain. And do you know, my dear friends, over all the years that I've been teaching, I've found only one school in Australia that teaches brain hygiene. You know, youngsters today need to know that if you take drugs of any kind, including alcohol, to the point where you start getting high, you're killing off brain cells. You can't do that on a regular basis and expect to be normal. Now, you know, when you drink alcohol and you get drunk, it takes about 24 hours for the residue of the drug to get cleaned out of your body. That's what the, excuse me, that's what the hangover is all about. But you know, if you smoke pot, the residue of that drug takes much longer to get out of the body. So if you continue to smoke, that residue starts to build up, and it can clog the connections in the brain, so the person does not function normally. You know, I had a youngster in my class when I was teaching high school, and he had absolutely fabulous personality. He was talented musically, just a wonderful person. And as soon as he graduated, he went to work for a rock band, and he started to smoke pot. And what he did is he started to smoke pot on a regular basis, and he came back after about a year. Would you take one out for me, please?
Oh, I thought you already had it.
Thank you.
That's the Vanna White part.
Anyway, he came back after about a year, and he came at a day when I was really busy. And I said, Mike, I said, you know, I'd really like to talk to you, but can you come back tomorrow and maybe we can have lunch together? And he said, gee, Father, I don't know what I'm going to feel like tomorrow. Can you imagine that this kid couldn't make an appointment for lunch the next day? How in heaven's name can you expect a person like that to make plans a year or 5 years from now to give direction for their life? You know what happens is when you start getting involved this way with these drugs, you become a dysfunctional human being. Well, you know what the scripture says? The scripture says, do all things in moderation. So that doesn't mean that you have to never be involved in drinking alcohol. But if you do it in moderation, it can be healthy. It's the same way with marijuana. Marijuana can be used therapeutically, but in moderation. In the Bible it says, wine is good for the stomach. Read the good book. But please note it says a little bit of wine is good for the stomach. Now, you know, I think it's really important for you all to understand that we're talking about responsibility and then the choices you have to make if you want to be healthy. Now, the other thing is that the brain is the most fantastic computer you could possibly imagine. Your brain has recorded every single piece of information that you have come in touch with from the time you're born to this moment. It's all there. And you can take that information off of the brain if you know how to use the machine. But for most of us, it's like having a state-of-the-art computer and you put it in your living room so everybody can see it. And you cover it up in the evening so it doesn't get dusty. But you don't know how to use it. I mean, it's a huge potential, but you don't know how to use it. Our brains are the same way. We're not being taught in our educational institutions how to use the brain. Now, one of the ways in which you can tap into all of that information is hypnosis. And I had to read through some of these research projects when I was studying for the work that I'm doing now. And there was this one project where this woman who was 30 years old, and she was taken into a relaxed state like the one we did yesterday. And the hypnotist said, I want you to go backwards in time until you're in the 3rd grade. So she made a physical and mental adjustment, and then she started to talk like a 3rd grader. She said, I'm in the 3rd grade. The hypnotist said, can you describe the decorations that are above the blackboard in your classroom? And she said, oh, yes. Now, she had her eyes closed, but she's pointing like this and describing everything that's there in great detail. And the hypnotist can ask, how many students are in the classroom? Now, again, she's got her eyes closed, but she's doing this. And she says, 23. And the doctor says, can you name these people? She said, oh, yes. Again, she does this. It's as if she is in the classroom again, and when she focuses, she can see absolutely everything that is in the classroom. Now, my dear friends, you don't have to have a hypnotist to help you do that. You can do that with meditation. See, if you know how to lower the brain frequencies yourself, without having a professional help you to do that, you can lower your brain frequencies, and when you get here, you can use your mind to stimulate the brain to give you what information you want, and it'll come into your conscious awareness. This is why we can teach youngsters in school how to meditate before and after they study, and how to use meditation during exams, and they will spend less time studying, get higher grades. Now, let me say a little bit about mind. It's really important that you understand the wonderful things that science is doing to help us to understand the spirit dimension of our humanness. The scientific community has made it very clear. Mind is the energy that we refer to as God, or universal intelligence, or cosmic energy, or unconditional love. That's the energy that permeates the entire cosmos. Now, we experience that reality in different ways. The scientists tell us that when your brain frequencies are high, you experience mind in what we call a conscious awareness. But when your brain frequencies are lower, you experience mind in a completely different way. It's called subconscious. Please note, mind is not in 2 parts. Mind is one. That's the infinite reality. But our experience of mind is different. Now, please note, when you get here, there is no limit, not even limit of time or space. So that in meditation, you can go frontwards and backwards in time, and you can move from this point on the planet to any other point in the universe. That's possible. Now, lest you think this is starting to sound like science fiction, how many of you have ever had a dream in which you got information about something that was going to happen in the future? Anybody? Put your hands up real high, please. The rest of you look around. 4 or 5 people, okay? You know, that's a very common experience. Precognitive dreams are very common. But, you know, people don't talk about them. You know why? They're afraid that if you do, they will come and get you. But, you know, if you look into Scripture, you will find that in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, God was speaking to people in dreams all the time. Now, I don't know where this came from, but when I joined the order, we were told under holy obedience, don't pay attention to dreams, that's a cult. And by God, we didn't. You know, in those days when anybody in authority said anything, you didn't ask questions, you just did. Huh? And people would say to me, Justin, do you dream? I said, no, I don't dream. And I taught myself how not to remember my dreams. Well, when I started to prepare myself for this kind of work, I started to pay attention to my dreams. And I'll tell you, it's a it's a valuable resource for all of us. So when I'm teaching meditation, I teach people not only how to remember dreams, but how to generate dreams for getting information to get direction for your life or to solve problems in your life. Now, the most important part of all of this theory is the application. In our Franciscan approach to spirituality, we want to know, how does this work in my everyday life? It's always a practical application. So, if you look at this chart, if you want to change anything here in your normal waking state, that's the least effective place for you to go. Do you know people who have stopped smoking and then they've stopped again and they still need to stop? Maybe closer to home. Do you know anybody who's ever been on a diet? Then they go to another diet. And they still need a diet. If you ask any of these people, do you want to change? They say yes. And they mean it. Why don't they get the effect? Because, you know, I told you all of the information that you come in touch with from the time you're born to this moment is on the brain. But it's held down here in the subconscious. That means that the information is there, but you're not consciously aware of it. But it is this huge body of knowledge that you've stored that creates the person you are here. This is the effect. The cause is here with your thought process. So if you want to be able to change your life, you've got to change the information that's down here in the subconscious. That's what meditation is all about. When I joined the order, we had to meditate a half hour in the morning and a half hour in the evening, by law. Why? Because the church knows that if you go into that state, you're connecting with that divine energy. And if you're looking for what it is that you're supposed to accomplish that day, it becomes very clear. So you can set goals for that day. At the end of the day, you go into meditation, you can count all the blessings that you've achieved and all of the successes you've had. And that helps you to understand how powerful you and God are working together. Just an example. When I first joined the order, we were about maybe 40 people in the house. And there was the friar, that I really had a hard time dealing with. I was really impatient with him. So we were told, if you go into meditation and picture the way you want to be, you can create that reality. So I go into meditation every day and I picture myself being with this person, see myself looking at and paying attention to all the good things that I could see in him. I saw myself listening very attentively to everything that he said. I saw myself being very patient. All I did was create that image with my mind. Now see, that information gets recorded on the brain. The brain doesn't know whether this is synthetic information or whether it's real. It just takes the information. If you repeat that often enough, what's going to happen is it's going to go into the subconscious. One day I was with this friar, and without ever thinking about it, I was paying attention to the good things I could see in him. I was listening carefully. I was very patient. It comes absolutely automatic from your subconscious. You know, my dear friends, this is one of the most powerful tools we could give to human beings, and it's not in our educational institutions. Now, the saints are the ones who really told us over and over again, if you want to take total control of your life, you must be involved in the discipline of mental prayer or meditation. Why? Because that gets your thought process disciplined, and what you picture is what you will create in your life. So if you fill your mind with good, healthy, wholesome, positive thoughts, those are going to get recorded on the brain. And when you repeat those over and over and over again, they go into the subconscious and you have a good, healthy, wholesome, positive life. My dear friends, you cannot play around with the mind and the brain. You put garbage in your mind, it's going to go into the brain and through the subconscious into your life. So you really have to discipline the thought process. Now, I just want to give you a couple of examples on how this works. You know, a gentleman by the name of Jose Silva he was the first one who created a very practical program for teaching people from a scientific point of view how to meditate and how to apply all of this in very practical ways. He was a Catholic gentleman from Laredo, Texas, and he created a meditation program, and I teach that program at our center in Indianapolis. Into one of his classes came a man by the name of Carl Simonton, who was a radiologist. He was working with terminal cancer patients. His wife is a psychotherapist. When he saw this model, he said to himself, you know, if cancer is showing up in a person's life, it's possible that that cancer could be caused by an overload of negative thought process that has been put into the subconscious either consciously or subconsciously. Then he said, if that's the case, if we could teach these people to fill their minds with positive thoughts, healing thoughts, and have those recorded on the brain, when they go into the subconscious, you would expect the disease to change. So he and his wife went to Dallas-Fort Worth, and they started a cancer counseling and research center. They were dealing only with terminal cancer patients. They taught these people how to meditate 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at noontime, and 15 minutes in the evening. Through all these years, they have had between 80 and 85% total remission of terminal cancer. Now, these two people wrote a book called Getting Well Again, and all the information on the visualization process that these people used is all contained in that book. Now, these people started to travel all over the world, helping other doctors to understand the power of meditation in the healing process. And into one of their classes came a man by the name of Bernie Siegel. Now, he's a medical doctor. And when he saw this model, he said, why do you limit this to cancer? He said, this will work for any disease. So he went back to his practice and got other doctors to send to him people who had spontaneous remission. You know, people come to the doctors and they have an incurable disease and the doctors don't know what to do with it. So they tell them, well, come back in 6 weeks and we'll just monitor what's going on. Well, they come back and the disease disappears. Bernie Siegel studied these people, and he found that what was common to all of them was a huge shift in their thought process. When that happened, the disease disappeared. So he wrote a book called Love, Medicine, and Miracles. It's still on the market. And he has examples of people who have used meditation to overcome every kind of possible disease. When I was in Switzerland just a month ago, there was a young girl there who was using meditation. She had an autoimmune disease. I don't know if it was lupus or not, but she was told, she was bedridden, and she was told by the doctors, you will never walk again. She started to use meditation. She came into my class, And afterwards, she did an interview with me, which is on the internet. And in that interview, she revealed how she started to use meditation, and she is now functioning absolutely normal because she has used meditation to create the healing process. My dear friends, please remember this. You are a powerful spiritual being because you're connected to divine energy. That's no limit. And our world is telling you you are all limited people. Why? Because they want you to believe that you're only in the physical world. Nobody's telling you about all the spiritual power that you have. And this is what Jesus was all about. He said, you see these things I'm doing? He said, greater things than these shall you do, provided that you connect with the divine presence within yourself the way he did. And then Jesus said very clearly, follow me. And you know, my dear friends, this season of Christmas is supposed to be a time when we review that reality. And if you want this season to have the presence of Jesus, then you must become the living presence of Jesus in our world today. That's what this season is all about. When you smile and you reach out to another person and you give honest compliments, you're dumping the divine presence of love everywhere you go. That's what Christmas is all about. Now, you know what I want to do is I want to be able to show you how all of this fits together into a very practical 15-minute meditation. And so what we're going to do today is a morning meditation, and you will find there's going to be a blank space in the meditation so you can look ahead into the day to see what it is that you want to accomplish. And the images that come to you while you're there will be guided by God to help you understand what it is you're supposed to do. The companion to this one, which is the evening meditation, helps you to look over the day to count your blessings and see how successful you are. So if you stand, please, we'll do the hymn and then we'll do the meditation.